Good evening. It's just past the hour of 7 o'clock, and I will now call this evening of April 7th, meeting of the Appropriations Committee to order. And if you would all please stand and have a pledge of allegiance with you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, first on our agenda will be the approval of the minutes of March 17th. Do I have a motion approval?
I move to approve the minutes of March 17th, 2022.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, the motion to approve the minutes of March 17th was made by Bob D'Amico and seconded by Janice Height. All in favor? All opposed? The approval of the minutes of March 17th passed unanimously. The next on our agenda is the approval of the minutes of March 24th. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Janice Height made a motion to approve, and Tony Petit seconded. All in favor? All opposed? The motion to accept the minutes of March 24th passed unanimously. Next on our agenda will be the presentation of the budget presentation of our solid waste, water, and sewer enterprise fund.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Scott Charpentier, DPW Director here in Northborough. Had a boo-boo. Working in my driveway, things gave way. So we'll go over the three enterprise funds, solid waste, into water, and then we'll terminate with sewer. You have the narratives, I believe. First I'll go through solid waste. So we chose to re-engage our collection contract for another year. So we bid out a 3-year contract with 2 one-year renewals at the town's discretion. We chose to renew it. It's upcoming year, FY23. The contract includes a 3% annual escalation. And we also have in that contract disposal of our recyclable materials. You remember over the past few years, recyclable materials have been a complicated commodity. Their resale value has dropped significantly over past years, mostly due to a demand issue. Plenty of supply. The demand was a problem when China sort of shut their doors from United States recyclable materials. It took a few years for the market to adjust. That market has began to adjust, which is good news for us. If you look at the budget page in the budget documentation,
8-4.
8-4, thank you, John. In the boxed out area, you'll see solid waste and recycling disposal adjustments. So the disposal piece, the $174,800, that includes, that's due to our Wheelabrator trash disposal. And I'll discuss that in a moment. The second one, the $83,000 reduction, is associated with disposal of our recyclable materials. And as I said already, the market is recovering. MRFs are popping up, material processing facilities. So there's a bit more of a market for the recyclable materials. So that's helped us bring down the cost. 2 years ago, we were paying more money to get rid of recycling than we were trash. Recycling was $70 a ton to get rid of. Trash was $74, $73 a ton. So that has flip-flopped. We're now below the trash number. Couple of the market changes with the residents of Northborough resulted in this $84,000 reduction. The reason I call out the residents of Northborough is the quality of our recycling. So when Republic collects all the recycling, they go to Casella for processing. You know, they literally dump the truck. They have quality control personnel there to review the product. And if there are certain percentages and contamination levels in that load, the price of the load goes drastically higher. And our materials are not as marketable as maybe in other communities. Our material is very marketable in this town. The recycling is clean, meaning there are not a lot of plastic shopping bags in it, or styrofoam with food debris, or a little peanut butter jar full of peanut butter remnants. I'm sure a lot of residents, and maybe some of you, have gotten a sticker on your recycling bin that says, something in here is not acceptable. We do that, we have our contractor do that because of this. It saves everybody in town money, both on the subsidy side, on the tax side, as well as the operating expenses for the enterprise fund. So it's twofold. The market's better, and we have a better product we put on the street. So commend both sides, I guess. America for modifying the way we operate, and then the residents of Northborough for doing a better job. So that helped us out quite a bit on the recyclable material. You'll see disposal of trash of solid waste is at $76 a ton. It's just above that $84,000 number, that 174.8. So that's gone up from a little over $71 a ton last year to $76 a ton. That can be attributed to a lot of factors, primarily fuel is my guess, but the number, that $76 a ton, is based on consumer price indexes specific to the solid waste industry. That's a substantial increase from what we've had in past years. It's just a hair over 7% increase. For example, we were paying in 21 $71.07. Now we're paying 76. So it's a pretty good increase, but we were lucky to offset it with the recycling numbers. There are a couple other items to note of increases. You'll see in the unclassified materials, our household hazardous waste day has gone up slightly, but more importantly, the disposal of solid waste, of yard waste, has gone up. At the highway garage, we accept leaves and brush. When COVID came about, we stopped our brush days. We couldn't stop the service, so we reorganized the materials at the highway garage to allow brush on one side, leaves on the other. We have to pay for that removal. So those costs have gone up with fuel costs, so we reflect that in the unclassified. Another note, it's a lot less costly to dispose of leaves than it is brush. Leaves are easy. They go into a windrow, you compost, somebody composts it, brush has to be processed. As soon as residents take brush and throw it in the leaf pile is contaminated. So we either have a staff member cleaning literally sticks out of the leaf pile while there's a excavator loading, or it gets rejected and we get a higher price. The piles are well separated. The residents are doing a great job. We're doing what we can to remind them, but they're doing a great job in keeping the sticks where the sticks are and the leaves where the leaves are. So that, again, that makes our product, it's not marketable, but more manageable, and our costs don't go higher. So overall, it's a very light budget impact this year. It's slightly less. It's a 1% increase, spread out amongst the additional costs for the unclassified, and then the savings we've seen in the recycling disposal. We're proposing the same level of tax subsidy, a little over $337,000 as we've had in past years. And our revenue projections are relatively level over the past years. And we've seen, it's a very conservative approach. We've seen revenue go up slightly, especially with the pandemic. People are buying more Kaiser bags, but we went with a historic level revenue projection to be conservative. That hits the high marks on solid waste, if there are high marks when we're talking about solid waste. I don't know if there's anything to add, John?
No, just to be past this, this blip where we're paying as much or more to get rid of recyclables and solid waste was a serious issue for us to be able to get through. So it's nice to see it come back down, and the hauler has done a great job for us. And as Scott said, we're in. It's a 3-year contract with 2 1-year extensions. We're in the first year of that extension, and if things continue, hopefully we can stay with that contract. The increases are reasonable, and the service has been very good.
There are any questions on our solid waste enterprise fund? Okay. No?
Good.
Water is a little more exciting, for me at least. So you have the water narrative, 8-6. The front portions of it are what we've presented in the past. You go to page 8-9, that's the budget changes and initiatives. And the Water Enterprise Fund has seen substantial fluctuations over the past couple of years. We were together last year. We talked about the impacts of MWRA assessment that were coming in FY '22. I'll briefly go over those. When the pandemic struck heavily in calendar '20, the Metro West area, the Metro Boston area essentially shut down. People were staying home, restaurants were closed. They didn't use much water. People were staying home. Where were they staying? Northborough. Bedroom communities, for lack of a better term. So our use went up. How the MWRA works is they give you your bill for the next fiscal year based on last fiscal year's percentage share of the overall use. We're a very small user, 0.5% of the entire use. Last year, FY '21, we went up to a 0.65. Not a big number, 0.5 versus 0.65, but percentage-wise, that's a substantial increase of our use. And then the city of Boston went way down. So our assessment went substantially up last year, almost $320,000. That was hard to absorb, but we have adequate fund reserves in the enterprise fund. The industry standard is 75 days of operating money sitting in the bank, 20%. We try to stay above that until a capital project hits, and then we take some money out, and then we build it back up. That's the cycle that we go through. We were able to stabilize things in FY '22. What has happened through calendar '21 is a very wet year. And everybody experienced this. I don't think I watered my lawn once. The clouds were here. It was very wet. We didn't sell a lot of water. Consumption was way down. John, did we include the graph or no?
I didn't.
No, I did not include it. So when our consumption goes down, our revenue goes down. So we had a sort of a perfect storm. We had a record high MWRA assessment and budget increase. We have an operating budget about $3 million, maybe 2.8, and a $300,000 hit on that is a substantial increase. We had record low consumption that last fiscal year. So extremely high costs, really low revenue. That's not a good business model. We've implemented some changes this fiscal year, FY '22, in order to not utilize all of our projected expenditures, basically trimming back our expenses, utilizing less consultant services, doing the bare minimum we need to for consultant services to meet regulatory requirements, minimizing extraneous purchases. We have 3 or 4 of everything on the shelf. We don't need 3 or 4 of everything, but it's good to have. We can't really get much of anything now anyway, and it's really expensive, so it's a good opportunity for us to kind of use stuff off the shelf. We have a large operating item under a distribution of materials. That is a $132,000 item for FY '22. We're reducing that by $65,000 for FY '23. That includes $65,000 annually for hydrant replacement. We're suspending that for fiscal year '23 in order to reduce the projected budget. We've also tapered that back substantially in FY '22 to a savings of approximately $50,000 on the expense side of this fiscal year. There are other methods of tightening the belt that we've implemented, this fiscal year as well, doing a little more in-house and farming out. For example, we have a valve exercising program that's mandated by Mass DEP. We were, last year, gathering the GIS data on each valve, submitting it to our consultant quarterly. It's only 3 quarters because you can't do it in winter. And then they would incorporate it into the GIS, give us a report, and then we'd migrate it over to our online mapping. we're forgoing that this year. Doesn't hurt. You know, we'll put it in next year when we have adequate funds to have the consultant do that. The data isn't lost, it's sitting there. We'll just do a larger migration, next year. So those are some of the smaller things we're doing operationally this year to reduce our expenditures so that our fund balance, maintains, the liquidity. So that next fiscal year, when it's a challenge, I mean, I'll explain to you why that challenge is, we have funds available. So one of the requirements, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just want to make sure I understand what you're saying is basically the way MWRA sets its pricing is there's a lag. So obviously, next year's MWRA pricing is going to be low because we use so little water kind of thing, but the problem is you've got the delta of, you're paying for last year even though we used less this year. Is that the kind of?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
that's exactly what it is.
So we just gotta get through the lag and.
Right, yep, that's exactly what it is. So our MWRA assessment this year is $250,000 less than it was last year.
Okay.
So last year it went up 320, this year it's going down 250, so the delta averages out over 2 fiscal year of what we normally would experience in the past.
Okay.
So, one of the reasons right now we're in the FY '22 belt tightening for our operating expenses is the graph you see before you. The graph, thank you, John, shows our consumption since FY '13. So, you'll see FY '22 is a record low consumption, water consumption. We have sold the least amount of water we've sold since FY '13. That's not easy to manage, and it's certainly not a very predictable thing. That's why we maintain the fund balance where it needs to be.
Units for y-axis?
Those are gallons.
Okay.
So we'll, annual gallons, so we're typically in the, 38 to 40 million gallons, a year. Sometimes we dip high when there's a drought. I believe there was a drought in the FY '17 year. You can see, if you were to put just a general average line down, you'll see, and I've been here before, talking about how we sell less water every year, because my job as a water operator is to tell you to conserve water. But my job as a businessman is to sell you enough water so I can pay for all the services that you need to get your water.
Right.
It's a struggle from a business perspective. I'm telling you don't buy my product, but I really need you to buy my product. So it's an interesting struggle. We laugh about it all the time in the water industry. So we had a record low revenue, FY '22. So that we capture this. I review this every quarter. We get the bills together. I know what the revenue is. I see where my projections are. We have seasonal fluctuations, obviously. But we saw this coming. We adjusted. We pivoted as we needed to. Working with John, Jason, Finance Director, my water and sewer operators, so that we can manage through this fiscal year. So this year's a struggle. Next year, this is what I was going to say. So the revenue projections for next fiscal year, FY '23, are required to be based upon the prior fiscal year's consumption. So when I'm presenting something at the microphone at town meeting, or in front of you, or in front of the Water Sewer Commission, my revenue projections have to be based on last year's sales, FY '22, which is a challenge.
Because it's low.
It's nice to have a $250,000 reduction in the MWRA, but it doesn't correct for, the lowest sales we've had in a decade. So when you look at the proposed budget for FY '23, you'll see we're cutting $318,000 out of the budget. A large piece of that is the MWRA, the $250,000 reduction. As I indicated, we're foregoing for a single year the hydrant replacement program for a reduction of $65,000. And the other substantial one is our unclassified use. We typically budget that at $75,000 a year. That's for unforeseen circumstances. We had a water main break on Main Street by Brigham, I don't know, 4 years ago. That was a $50,000 hole in the ground we had to dig. That was expensive. That's what that line item is for. We've reduced that down to $25,000 this year. That saves us $50,000. How I'm gonna manage that single line item going forward in FY '23 is to postpone some of the tasks that we do annually that can be done in May. And rather than engaging my consultant in November, I'll engage them in April or May. They still have time to do the work during the fiscal year, we still meet the regulatory reporting requirements, but I have a pair of suspenders with my belt, and by that time, I'll know where my revenue is. I will knock on wood, I cannot imagine I will break another revenue, another consumption record next year. I certainly don't want a drought, but I'd like to have some lawns being watered. That's how I'm planning to manage this in FY '23.
Okay.
Another component relevant to the budget is that when we prepare our revenue projections and our projected FY '23 expenditures and we compare the two, I can't compare them with a rate adjustment. I can't say, I'm basing my consumption in FY '23 off of a record low year in '22, but I'm gonna throw a 5% rate increase on it, so I'm okay. I'm gonna put my money back in. I can't do that because the rates may not pass. If they don't pass, I can't be in a structural deficit. I can't manage that, just can't. I can't prepare a balanced budget based on a hope that a rate increase passes. So there's a lot of struggles associated with running a zero profit, zero loss business after a really challenging year. So, I mean, I know it's a lot. You know, the thing is we have adequate fund balance. You know, this, you know, the proposal at town meeting to fund the enterprise fund about $250,000 out of the fund balance still leaves us just under 40 days of fund balance available, which is manageable. It's not desirable, but it's manageable. And the expectation is that revenue is going to come back to something a little more normal, and, you know, a modest rate increase due to, you know, CPI and other factors that everybody's experiencing, whether it's at the supermarket, or the gas pump, or just, you know, paying your heat bill. I expect things to be, the ship to be righted when we sit down here talking about FY '24. That's a lot of water jargon and stuff, but I don't know, if there are any detailed questions about the good, the bad, and the ugly news?
I think the underlying message here, just like the way we manage ourselves with our free cash and our financial reserves, is to be conservative and hold reserves because you never know what's gonna happen. In all the years of doing this, I never planned or thought, to be perfectly honest, that a pandemic, A, would hit, and B, would impact water sales. You plan for recessions, you plan for droughts and weather-related stuff, but the pandemic caused such a yo-yo of consumption and shifting budgets. And it swung one way, now it's swung back the other, and hopefully a year from now, things will stabilize and we'll kind of get back on track. But it shows that you need to be conservative and you need to have reserves to manage through these unexpected situations. And Scott's done a good job of managing through this. Things will stabilize. If you used your reserves, then you build them back up and you get back on an even keel. The key here is that what we don't do is have these wild swings for the ratepayers and have knee-jerk reactions. Our job as managers is to smooth out the impacts of these unexpected interruptions. And so that's what we're doing here. But this is just a challenging year for sure.
I've had conversations with my peers about, when they manage their budgets on a shoestring, and when they see what we saw for the end of the very last year, and how they reacted with substantial rate increases, and now they're looking in the exact opposite direction. So it's comforting to have a water sewer commission, board members like yourself, who understand being conservative, managing, looking well forward. I appreciate this. one more, not quite as exciting as, trash, water, sewer. We'll end on a high note, we'll talk about sewage. This is the simplest of all the budgets. As you may or may not know, we still don't have any resolution to the saga that is our relationship with Marlboro. That's still in litigation. We have not had any decisions, determinations, or directions provided to us. To say we're just treading water another year is probably accurate. We've been projecting increases to our Marlboro use charge based upon our historic methods. We've been very conservative with our estimates. We've been estimating a 10% increase every year. We're doing that again. You'll see in the line item Marlboro use charge, we're projecting a 10% increase, so that's an $81,000 budgetary increase. We've done that over the past several years. The only other really substantial budget increase would be the contractual services for $17,547. That's primarily associated with our SCADA services. So SCADA is a supervisory control and data acquisition program. I discussed it with you the last time I was here in the project updates. Accompanying that SCADA component is contractual services with our consultant, as well as internet service and wireless service. So it needs to be a redundant and robust network. It's life critical when it comes to drinking water and sanitary sewer. It's certainly environmentally critical. So we have additional costs associated with our consulting services. So the consultant in this case provides us with implementation pieces. So this is our first year of SCADA. You can't just build this robust computerized interface and just hand it to a water operator and say, start playing with it, see how you figure it out. So we have a lot of training hours. We have response hours to help us, to assist us when there's an emergency. The hope and expectation is we don't use those hours. But at 2 o'clock in the morning in February, when a pump fails and things are coming out of the bottom of the door, I want to have an expert available in the case we need them to understand what's going on in the computer system. Also, every single location needs to have a cellular service. There are two types of SCADA systems: fixed radio, and cellular. We've gone in the cellular direction. It's a little more reliable and robust when it comes to communication capabilities. It's where everybody's going in the future. Radio communication has data limitations, and everybody knows these files are getting bigger. There's more and more data. I don't want to have to transition over from radio to cellular in the future. Radio is very expensive. You literally put antennas all over the place. So that project is progressing well. We're actually right now discussing with the MWA to get communication from their meter to our system, so we can know hourly how much water is coming through their meter into Northborough, which will be a huge asset for us. When you think about a big water line breaking in the woods, you're never gonna know. You know, that they could be leaking for months. You'll have no idea. If you know hourly what's going on at the MWA and you see a massive amount of water flowing at 3 in the morning, well, that might be an indication that there's a water leak, because the town of Northborough is not, all watering their lawns at 3 in the morning. So that's a good opportunity for us. So those are two big budgetary increases. $81,000 for Marlboro, $18,000 for contractual services, adds up to about $100,000. But we do have some debt. It's not retiring, but it's near retirement. It's primarily the two loans we have for the Heitzman properties. They're relatively short-term loans, 10-year loans. They're coming near completion, which will be nice because it'll also free up some debt capacity on the sewer enterprise fund side for projects going forward. So it helps offset quite a bit of the actual increases with contractual services and the projected ones for Marlboro. Overall, we're looking at a 1% increase. When you look at a $2.4 million budget and you get a $24,000 increase, that's more than palatable. I don't see any projections for any reason for any rate adjustments in the sewer department. We've had substantial rate increases for several years in anticipation of settling with Marlboro. Hasn't happened yet. We're in a good place as far as finances go. Our fund balance is it requires an extensive explanation to our auditor every year, when all I wanna do is say, just go down Route 20, you'll know why. But, you know, we're in a good position on the sewer side. Those are the three enterprise funds, I'm not sure if there's anything.
Yeah, Bob.
Yeah, just a couple questions. One on the capacity. So 30% of our capacity is going through the Marlboro.
All of our capacity goes to Marlboro, we're
All of it.
allocated 30%, or 28% of theirs.
So can you define that for me? What does that mean, allocate 30%?
Well, their treatment plant is allowed to discharge 2.89 million gallons a day.
No, just 30%.
So call it 3 million, and we're allowed to give them 28%, so we're allowed to give them 800,000 gallons a day.
So what do we do with the rest?
That's all we produce. We only generate
Okay.
between $500,000 and $600,000, 500 and 600,000 gallons a day, on average. So when we have a rain event, and like a really, like a heavy rainy October, we could push 900 to 1 million gallons a day to Marlboro. On, you know, regular summer days, June, July.
Well, that's getting to my question. So what happens if that happens? What do we can't go 30%?
No, we're not allowed to go over.
Right. So what happens?
We're not near capacity. That's the important thing.
Okay.
And, you know, if we're between 550 and 600,000 gallons a day, that allows us about 250,000 gallons a day of additional capacity for development, redevelopment, new properties new users to come in. One of the capital items that we have going before town meeting this year is Infiltration and Inflow Elimination program. So the reason why, you know, our average for a year could be 550,000 gallons, but on a wet week, we can pump 900,000. That delta, that 350,000 gallon a day delta is clean water going into our sewer pipes. It's rainwater coming in the manhole covers, it's groundwater seeping through cracked pipes. It's people's sump pumps that are illicitly connected to their laundry discharge. You know, that's not uncommon. Luckily, Northborough we didn't find any of those on our first investigation. But we're proposing at town meeting $360,000 to eliminate I&I. We've identified approximately 75,000 gallons of inflow into our system that I'm gonna seek funds at town meeting to eliminate. So if I could take 70,000 gallons out of clean water from going in, you know, that isn't necessarily, that doesn't translate to $70,000 at the end of the year, but that's on the wet days. So that could be 30,000 gallons a day of capacity.
Yeah.
So instead of 550, we're pumping 520. That's free capacity. Sergeant.
Just keep in mind, Bob, too, that only about 30% of the town is on sewer. So most is on septic.
Yeah.
So only about 30%.
Okay, I was just trying to define in my head what the 30% meant. Okay, I
Yeah.
understand. The other question I had was the Heightsma property. I know that's kind of dead in the water because we can't, you know, use it really.
Yeah.
But what is the plan in the future for that? I mean, is there a chance that we could end up using it?
Well, if I may, so as you know, we've completed pleading the case with Marlboro. So the litigation is complete. We're waiting for the court to render a decision. And I think part of what comes out of that will determine or influence what happens to that Heightsma property.
Okay, that court decision was a while ago.
Well, it wasn't this, yeah, the case was held, we haven't gotten it was back in September of last year.
Okay, so
So-
nothing's happened since.
We haven't gotten a decision. It's very complicated, and it will be a precedent-setting case, one way or another. So the fact that they're taking so long, or the judge is taking so long to give us a decision, I think speaks to the complexity of the dispute, but also the technical pieces of it as well. So the Heightsma property, if you remember, was originally purchased to provide a location for subsurface disposal, essentially to create a giant leach field, like a giant septic system. That was going to be an alternative if the Nippity's permit didn't allow for additional capacity at the main plant. Unfortunately, we've looked at you know, we've had our consultants look at it in a little bit more detail, and it's been called into question whether or not, if it goes subsurface, the whole point is they want it to go subsurface, they don't want it to go into the Assabet. But the geological makeup of the area is such that it's gonna wind up in the Assabet anyway, more than likely. So, so we're just trying to wait for this all to play out. The good news is that, you know, we're wrapping up paying for it. It's a, you know, it's a couple of $1 million piece of property that the Sewer Enterprise Fund owns, and, you know, if not needed, it can be surplus, in order to help pay for, you know, maybe some of our contribution expenses to the renovation over at the Wesley Treatment Plant. So right now, we're just sitting tight. Really, the whole decision about what direction we're going in, I remember at one point, and I'm not telling tales outside of school here because it's all a matter of public record at this point based on litigation, but at one point, you know, the mayor was basically saying, you're out of our plant. You know, the agreement is expired, we want you out of our plant. Go build your own across the street where you own property, and, you know, obviously it's difficult to permit. The permitting horizon is 10, 15 years, and it's extremely expensive, which is why we wound up in that plant in the first place, so.
No, I understand, I just was wondering what's happening since
Yeah,
2018, really.
so it's just, we're just hanging on to the asset and waiting to see how things shake out.
One thing that sewer divisions do often is a comprehensive wastewater management plan, CWMP. Mass DEP recommends you do one every 10 years. It has a 20-year projection on what your sewer use is and where it should go for treatment. We did one in 2007, so we're approaching time to discuss preparing another CWMP. They're expensive, they're very expensive. It's a land planning exercise. Where are your developments, where should you extend lines, what's the population growth, what's the industry growth, are you gonna have you know, manufacturing or mushroom farms, you know, where you use a lot of water and sewage, but when that gets done, that will, it reevaluates and reassesses the Heitzman property. That's what grew fruit to the Heitzman property's idea of groundwater, of pushing it in the ground. Technologies have changed. In another 5 years, when we do another plan, who knows what the technology will be or where the DEP will stand with the use. So, you know, my recommendation as an engineer would be to hang on to it, and as an operator who owns it, hang on to it for a while. So we'll see where it pans out.
One of the complicating factors, not to belabor this, but with regard to the sewer capacity in development, is the original plan was very heavily focused on sewering around our drinking wells. Well, our drinking wells are all offline, and the likelihood of us bringing them ever back online due to compatibility issues with the MWRA and just the regulatory climate and expense of because we're never able to supply all of our water from the wells, we always supplemented with the MWRA. We have been 100% MWRA, and so it calls into question whether or not it makes sense to sewer around wells that in all likelihood are never gonna be brought back online. So that would be part of the equation as well. But if we don't, then that folds back into your capacity, because you wouldn't be necessarily, unless it's a large number of failed septic systems or some other environmentally sensitive area that would warrant the expense of sewering it. That's another component. But to Scott's point, the comprehensive wastewater management plan is something that needs to be updated.
So,
By the way, all the history in your packet, both on the water with regard to the wells and the sewer, it's because we have members coming and going, and this stuff is like 20 years of, you know, not everybody's been around for 20 years and lived it. So we've got nice, really excellent summaries, just 3 or 4 pages, respect your time, and shows you exactly how we got to where we are, both on the wells as well as the sewer.
Yes, George?
do you have an idea of time frame to kind of hear the results of the litigation? I mean, if everything's finished, except now you're just waiting for them to deliberate.
Just, you know, we,
September 30th, 2021.
it was,
That's what we're told.
well, you know, originally, council said, you know, it could be a month, it could be 3 months, you know, it could be 6 months. Part of the issue, like everything else, has been sort of knocked askew due to the pandemic is the courts got really backed up and behind. So, you know, it's one thing to hear the cases, it's another to get around to writing the decisions. So, you know, they have the hearings and stuff, but they're backlogged on getting the decisions out, so who knows?
It's not gonna be done
Sometime,
in 3 years,
sometime this year,
sometime this year.
sometime this year would be my best guess.
Your breath.
Yeah, see you next April.
Yeah, sometime this year, we'll leave it at
So
that.
this will be exciting next year.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll hit the replay button.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
That's another one, though, it'd be nice to get resolution.
Yeah.
We've been dealing with it for a decade, you know?
Absolutely.
And it's very important, obviously.
Do we have any comments, questions? Okay, I think I'm safe now. and safe. Thank you for your presentation.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, John. Thank you, members.
Next on our agenda is the Finance Office and Undistributed Expenses, which would be employees' benefits and debt.
Come on up, Lisa. You all know Jason Little, our finance director, but you have not met Lisa Trost. Lisa is our new treasurer collector and the latest member of our financial team, so.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for the invitation to come back to see you guys this year.
Anytime.
Couldn't wait. I'm gonna warn you up front, this is not gonna be as exciting as the water sewer enterprise funds or even solid waste, so apologize up front for that. And again, Lisa started October 4th, and she's been a great addition to the team, and she's a great treasurer, and it's, you know, we're lucky to have found her. It's been great working with her, so
Thank you.
just wanted to
Thank you.
mention that. The finance department obviously is comprised of the treasurer collector's division, which Lisa's the department head of. The assessing division, which is headed by a principal assessor, and the accounting division, which is my second job here as town accountant. So the excitement with the finance department budget this year is that it is up $10,000, which is about 1%, and that obviously does not include, and I'm saying that sarcastically because all of that is just routine increases in minor things, changes in personnel that have happened over the course of the year. And no base wages have changed, obviously. I'm sure you've heard that a number of times, is that the collective bargaining agreements are open. And so there's been no wage increases budgeted in this budget. So overall, the treasurer, assessing, and accounting are up $10,000 or 1% overall. And really, there's nothing new or that notable beyond the operating of these departments in the budgets.
Jason is here to speak to the undistributed, so debt and health insurance as well. A little more exciting.
Oh, you're building it up.
Jason, you gotta sell a little bit more, but you gotta put a little punch into this.
So if there's any questions on finance, I'm happy to answer those on the finance department.
Yes.
Yeah, I just have a quick question on the senior citizens. Now, it's good that you guys are assisting the senior citizens. I'm just wondering, how do you get onto that, something like that?
I'm sorry, what?
Well, you assist senior citizens if they applicate for applications for real estate, right?
Yes.
And so, I guess I'm just trying to figure out what the qualifications are for that.
Well, there's a number of statutory exemptions, and we have an elderly disabled taxation fund that also is more of a voluntary program. It's a tax checkoff fund. But in order for us to provide tax relief, it has to be something allowable by Mass General Law. But we do list out all those statutory exemptions on our webpage, and there's a whole host of qualifications that people can check that.
I just
and
thought it was
split
just something different that Northborough's doing outside of Massachusetts, but you can't.
Right, we do have some separate trust funds that cover some more unusual cases, but there's an application process, and we do have information on the webpage, on the assessor's webpage, and I think you have it linked in your page too
Yeah.
as well.
The programs are means tested, basically, so you have to qualify and meet certain income thresholds.
We're still under the guidance of Massachusetts, I mean,
Yes.
Massachusetts tells us what we can and can't.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments on this portion? Okay, I guess we can move on to the undistributed expenses.
Okay, so I'm going to keep Lisa up here with me in case there's any questions. Her office handles the benefit administration. That's one of the largest components of undistributed expenses. So basically, undistributed expenses is everything a department doesn't handle. So the rest of the budget lines are departments and run by department heads, but undistributed is the more catch-all for everything else in the budget. So that includes employee benefits like health insurance, the transfers to the OPEB trust, life insurance. Other employee benefits are pension system, Worcester Regional Retirement Assessment, and workers' comp insurance. So that's what employee benefits consists of. So as you may have heard, our health insurance carrier, Fallon, exited the group insurance market for FY23. So we conducted a lengthy process of doing an RFP. We formed an informal JPA, joint purchase, is it arrangement or agreement?
Joint purchase arrangement.
Arrangement. So we formed the informal JPA with Southborough and the regional school district. So we were able to leverage a larger group in order to get get some aggressive bids from health insurance companies. The town signed a contract with Harvard Pilgrim, and we're currently in the process of planning our open enrollment and getting information out and transitioning employees from Fallon over to Harvard Pilgrim. We had a very modest increase as a result of that process and haven't had favorable claims. I think the more robust, we offer to our employees, we offer an HMO plan and a traditional HMO plan with no deductible, and I think that had a 2.42% increase over Fallon, from Fallon to Harvard Pilgrim for the more robust plan. And we also offer a lesser cost as an option to employees, which has a more limited network. And that was Fallon Direct. I think it's called Harvard Pilgrim Focus. And I think that there's an increase in that premium by about 4%. So as a result of positive things that have happened with our actual roster, we were able to accommodate that with a 1% increase overall in the budget. So that's the winning news here with the health insurance budget, that it's only going up 1%, which in traditional years, it could be a budget buster.
So if you, I would draw your attention to page 6-5, that has a 12-year, over a decade of our health insurance budget increases. And so you kind of see how it's bounced around. You can also see through the bullets, everything that we've done. Every time it starts to go a little bit crazy, we modify plan design, working with the employees, or we bid it out, or we consolidate carriers. And so over that 12-year history, or 13-year history, the average increase in our health insurance budget is 2.88, less than 3%. I will put that up against anybody, anytime, anywhere. And that has been us working together. It's been our employees, the teachers. In this last round, where we had to go out to bid, we brought the Insurance Advisory Committee together. It's all of the bargaining units, all the employees, including the K-8 schools. And I'm very pleased to say they were very cooperative through that bid process, unanimously recommended going to Harvard Pilgrim. Benefits are high, which allows us to recruit and retain people, and the costs have been very manageable. So you see, people have gone to the Group Insurance Commission, the state's insurance group, and they've seen 6, 7, 8% increases with high deductible plans. So this has been a win all around for us. It has been a ton of work. Every time we have to address health insurance, it's a 6-month process. But a 10% increase in health insurance will take up 75 to 80% of any new revenue we have on the general government side. So if we don't manage it well, and it goes up 10%, we literally don't have enough money for wage increases. So, and again, just good information and working with the employees, over a decade of working together to 2.88% average over all those years. That's phenomenal.
Yeah, you guys have done a wonderful job.
Employees have come to the table in good faith again and again. The trust level is very high. And I think when we went through this last round, they actually said, thank you. You know, thank you. Because we were able to maintain the benefits. We didn't have to touch the benefits. The only time we move with plan design changes or ask for concessions, when we ask for them, they give them to us because they know we have to have them. But we don't, you know, it's not like I beat them up, come over here and act like a hero because, you know, we saved all this money. If we wanted to do that years ago, we could have gone to poor plans in the GIC and saved money back then. Overall, we did better off, we did better managing ourselves, working together. So, in this last round is just another example of that. So,
All right, so,
Jason, you gotta pump it up a
yeah,
little
no,
bit.
you do.
Tony, you gotta.
You're much better at it than me, John. So, okay, so the next
Got a
item.
question?
Oh,
Tony?
Sorry, Tony.
So this is the budget that we see with really substantial increases. And I just wanted, you know, for the sake of clarifying for everybody here, this is, you know, I mean, it doesn't have percentages, but, you know, subtotal employee benefits is up 7%. Undistributed expenses overall is up 9%. So this is where most of this is concentrated, and that is because there are not wage increases, salary increases in the other parts of the budget. Is this?
No, the big kicker here, Tony, is although the health insurance is managed well, not to steal Jason's thunder, but I'm pretty sure the next thing he was gonna talk about is the Worcester Regional Retirement.
Oh,
That's
it,
where
yeah,
we're getting, that's where we're seeing
That's
10% increases, and the issue there is, you know, you remember from the financial trend monitoring, that's one of the unfavorable trends, the unfunded liability.
also remember that you can't do anything about it.
Well, we are doing something about it, and that is that the Worcester Regional Retirement is on schedule to be fully funded by 2036.
Yes.
And in order to do that, you're looking at 10 and 11% increases for the foreseeable future. That's what's driving the undistributed numbers up, because we're taking care of that unfunded liability, which
Okay,
is a
so,
good thing, but you're paying for it.
So the Worcester retirement is on 6.9 here. And that's up, it looks like 11% or something like that.
It's 10.32%.
But then these other items here, like on the front page.
Oh, you know what?
Reading them correctly.
What you're probably looking at is, we're trying to cover everything, so just, in terms of recurring expensive, what's really up is misleading is that we include the warrant articles here, Tony. So it's all the capital, and that stuff's all being paid with free cash on a pay-as-you-go basis. So that sort of artificially inflates the overall number. If you're looking at page 6-1, that has all of the line items, which is the
yes.
front cover.
Right, it includes the warrant articles. But
Because if you look at everything else, it's relatively,
subtotal employee benefits, that subtotal there,
yeah,
it looks like it's up about 7% or something like that.
yeah. It's the Worcester Regional Retirement. That's what's killing
That's
you.
in there? Oh, yes, it is.
That's what's killing you,
Okay,
us.
so it's broken out here on the different.
Yeah.
so,
We try to bring it on a summary slide on the front with everything together, so you're gonna see it, and then each line has more detail. But when you look at that, the things that, you hear me say this at the trend monitoring, the things that we control, we've managed very well. The things that we don't control, like our retirement assessment, that's a bill that you just gotta pay. And it's a good thing, because if it wasn't going up, it would mean that they weren't on a funding plan, and that unfunded liability wasn't being addressed. If you remember, I always say, it's unfavorable, but it's improving, and you don't need to do anything about it, because it's on a funding schedule. Unlike OPEB, which you do have to do something about. That is within our control.
Right, so that That dovetails well with the next point, that also included in that total is the $300,000 that we've put into this budget to start contributing back to OPEB again. So, again, and that's a positive to get started on that again, because we took 2 years off during the pandemic to take relief out of the tax levy for those 2 years. But getting back to it, our unfunded liability this past year is calculated to be $44 million. So we are making progress by making these substantial contributions to the trust fund. We invested, because we've put away so much, we're allowed to participate in having it be invested by the state's PRIP fund, which means they have full-time professional investment people that are investing this money. The fund balance has grown from I think we put in about $3,050,000 of our principal into the PRIP fund, and it's grown to over $5 million. So the returns have been, very, very good over the past few years that we've had it in there. So getting back to that, the thing with OPEB is it may sound like it's terrible that we have this $44 million liability, which is, in some ways, it's mostly on paper, because that liability has existed whether we've recognized it or not. It's been there since, I think it was 1968, when it became law that we were going to offer retirees health insurance coverage. So not being able to walk away from that promise that was made back then, that liability's existed since then. We just chose to, based on GASB pronouncements, recognize it starting in 2009. So since that period of time, we've set up this mechanism to fund it, and by adopting the meals and rooms tax as trying to create a revenue source to fund this. Our funding level is about 10%, which is pretty good considering of the 44 million, the 5 million versus the $44 million liability is actually pretty good considering we've only been at it for a short period of time. So as time goes on, dovetailing with what we said about the 2036 funding schedule for the retirement plan, part of our OPEB plan will be, to redirect the money that we have been paying to the pension plan and look at these holistically, these unfunded liabilities holistically, and start contributing to OPEB even more substantially when we get to 2036. And controlling for inflation, who knows what those numbers are going to be when we get there? They'll be different, but basically, the savings the town gets in 2036 from not having to make up contributions to the pension plan will be able to redirect it to OPEB and address that unfunded liability. So it's really, both of them are kind of on a funding plan together, in concert with each other. So that's pretty much tells the entire story of the employee benefits, because we already covered the Worcester Regional Retirement story.
Is the state managing the OPEB trust fund too, in terms of?
Well, we invest it with the state, the investors that manage the state's retirement funds. So the state's not managing our fund, but we haven't invested with the PRIT fund. So it's our money within the.
And the PRIT fund, it can invest in equities and things that we couldn't if we were on our own, like our trust funds are basically, CDs, banknotes, like very conservative.
Yeah.
These are real investments because, again, we put $3 million in and the balance is $5.2 million. And so we've generated, we got our money in just when the stock market recovered and went through the roof. So it was great returns for us.
Is this similar how the Worcester, there's the Worcester Regional Retirement Fund, is it a similar fund management to that?
Yes.
Yes.
It's the PRIT fund, the Pension Reserve Investment Trust, PRIT fund.
Okay.
That's what
And
we,
they're both using
Yep.
it?
And I believe with the Worcester Regional Group invests most of their money with the PRIT as well. I
Okay.
can't remember
Yeah.
the
I think so,
percentage,
yeah.
but they do invest some of their own money as well, but I think the majority of it is invested.
yeah, the PRIT fund's about $87 billion.
Okay.
So it gets real professional attention.
Yeah.
So as opposed to us trying to, invest a couple of $1 million on our own. You're not gonna see those kinds of returns.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on from the employee benefits to the other undistributed categories, unless there's any more questions. The other notable budget line is debt service, and obviously, we haven't taken on any more significant debt, so as time goes on, the debt declines, so it's paid off a little bit as we go every year. And one notable thing is that this past year, we were able to refund some of our older debt, which was from, there were issues from 2007 and 2009, I believe, and the savings to the town was approximately $806,000.
That was the library and the senior center outstanding debt was refinanced and some
Yeah,
water sewer.
There is a multitude of projects that were underneath that, but.
Yeah, those are the two big ones, so.
Okay.
So we're ready for the fire station is the bottom line on that one.
Right, we have a very low level of debt. We're below all of our measures for, what we would be allowed to carry for debt.
Yeah. If I made, my favorite number is, under the state's debt limit is 5% of the equalized valuation, $164 million is what we could legally have for debt, which is insane. Our entire budget would go to debt service.
And that's the conclusion of my presentation. If there's any questions, I'm happy to.
Questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, thank you for your report.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks for the invitation.
Well, and next we have the review of the Community Preservation Act.
Hello. Ron Campbell, Chair of the Northborough Community Preservation Committee. Happy to be with you again. Thanks for having us. Quick history of the CPA in Northborough for any that are a little behind, but we adopted it in 2004 by vote in the town, and I think it was town meeting 2005 when we adopted our bylaw, and then in 2006 was the first year that we had any articles coming before the town for community preservation projects. And I wanted to start off by saying I appreciate the support of the Appropriations Committee during every year since, supporting our articles at town meeting, where each year has been successful. So it's been quite a track record that we're happy with. And each year we want to try to bring the projects that we believe make sense and bring the benefits to the town. This year was very challenging. We had 10 applications, all of which were viable, all of which met the qualifications for community preservation funds. And we were in a bit of a quandary as to how we were going to support all those with the budget that we had. And that budget consisted of our projected revenue for FY23 of $750,000, and our reserves, which are in either of the, any of the key core accounts, which are affordable housing, historical restoration, and open space recreation category, as well as the unreserved account, which is basically the savings account of CPA in Northborough, where we have not designated those funds into any of the three core areas, but yet they're available to contribute to a project in any of the three core areas. And that total is $784,000. So we have a little over $1.5 million in our budget that we were able to consider allocating. That said, we are presented with one very large project, and that is Article 23 for the creation of 8 senior affordable housing units in Northborough on the property of the Village Drive area, currently right behind the library in town. The project is actually it's projected to cost $2.4 million. One of the most attractive things about the project is that we can not only utilize state-matched CPA funds that we're gonna bring forward, but it also is eligible for $800,000 in DCHD funds. And on top of that, the Housing Authority is contributing $200,000 in its own reserves. So $1 million of the cost can be accommodated there if the application is accepted. That application is already in with the DCHD. It meets the qualifications, so we're expecting success there. On the CPA side, we had to look for how are we gonna come up with the rest of it. And it's a little convoluted. The article is complicated. Part of it is reauthorizing amounts from prior town meetings that were granted and approved by the voters for affordable housing to the Northborough Affordable Housing Corporation. That's been a successful mechanism in town. Several other projects, the senior apartments on Center Drive, near the center of town, the 2 buildings restored next to the Trinity Church, now affordable housing units, contribution to Habitat for Humanity project over at the condos opposite the Wegmans complex, and so on. So it's really been a successful formula. Those funds, after each town meeting, are put in reserve, if you will. When Northborough Affordable Housing Corporation has a project, they come to the town, ask if they can pull those funds out. CPC votes on it, Board of Selectmen votes on it, and those get approved. So the funds that we're talking about, a total of $470,000 were pre-approved at town meeting, but not yet utilized for a project. So we're basically just coming and saying, let's use those to contribute to this project. And on top of that, we needed a total of $844,000 in CPC funds. And we drew those from the Affordable Housing Reserve, about $127,000, and most of the remainder from the unreserved account of CPC. And we were able to cover it. So I think we're most proud of this project. It's badly needed in town. There's always a huge waiting list for affordable housing, and affordable housing for seniors is a huge issue in all towns, including Northborough. And historically, over the course of our CPA projects in Northborough the last 15 years, we've not supported affordable housing in nearly the same level that we have for open space, recreation, historical properties. I mean, those are the more popular, the more visible projects maybe to those driving around and families using them and so on and so forth. But affordable housing is just as important. As I say, it's one of the key core elements. We're required each year to put at least 10% into each of those core areas. And I think, morally and as a right to the town and its citizens, it's good that we're putting a little more into that this year. So I'm very proud of our committee for finding a way to fund it. And, I hope your committee can support it as well. So it's a big one. It's the most complicated warrant article. I'm going to pause for a minute and see if you had any questions about how we're pulling this one off.
I would just add that the Board of Selectmen did vote to release $100,000 of ARPA funding to contribute to this project as well, to get that. So there's a lot of folks with skin in the game on this one. CPC, the state, the Housing Authority, Affordable Housing Corp, and the town.
Yes, Bob?
Did you supply us with a breakdown of where all the funding comes? I couldn't find it.
Well, it's in the warrant article,
It's in the warrant.
Oh, it's in the warrant article? Oh, I don't-
which is why it's confusing enough. I can't wait to present this one
Okay.
and read this twice or 3 times or however many times.
We went round and round with town council and the finance director to make sure that this one is accurate.
But basically, it comes from $230,000 in new revenue. That means a portion of the projected new revenue for FY '23. $127,000 in affordable housing reserve. That was already in the reserve account. Not the Northborough Affordable Housing Corporation necessarily, but just in the reserve account, not yet allocated to any one or any project. And then $486,000 out of our unreserved account, which has $652,000 available in it. So we're not using all the reserves, if you will, not using all of our savings, trying to keep some behind. The rest of it is confusing. There's $569 from unused from an old project that goes back to the Center Drive apartments. $24,000 in unused funds from demolition that was part of that project. $20,000 unused from a Habitat for Humanity project for a condo in Northborough, affordable housing condo, and then 100,000, 100,000, 100,000, and another 150, all from town meeting articles approved that were not yet utilized by NEHC or any other affordable housing project.
Well, thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah, that's okay.
I see where
My
it-
head spins when I look at it
Yeah,
also.
I was like, oh boy, how do you keep all track of all this?
I'm not quite sure, and I meant to compliment Jason E. Steelhardt, thank you very much. Jason helps, with the numbers. He presents us now with a nice spreadsheet and PowerPoint on where we sit, where the CPA funds are, because it's a little hard to get your hands around what future allocations are, what we're spending on the projected revenues of FY '23. Jason helps us be conservative in that regard. We typically bring in more revenue than we allocate for. That ends up in the unreserved fund, basically the savings account. So, each year, we're coming back to the next town meeting with some reserves in tow. Historically, we try to be conservative, and if we don't really have a hard use for it, rather than putting into one of the three categories, which limits us, we keep it in the unreserved, the fourth account, if you will, and it gives us more flexibility. And try to look for what's a big project where we might really need this. There's certainly some coming down the road, but this was, one of the first ones in the last few years that looked like it, really, it was timely, not to mention being very urgent and needed in town.
Plus you're buttoning up all those other articles that
Exactly, yeah. Trying to make.
Cleaning up
make-
all those
Make good use of the
little orphan
reserves that are out
funds,
there.
which makes Jason happy.
Exactly.
I just wanted to make sure everybody knows, in the packet with what John provided to you is a copy of the financial report that Jason put together. It has all the history, it's on the CPC, all of the matching funds, the budgets, and so all that history is there for your,
If you love spreadsheets, it'll be good reading for you tonight, so.
Oh.
Thank God Jason is good at it. Thank you again for your support, Jason. So we're, as I say, please let me know if there's any questions on it, but it's been well thought through, and I think hopefully we can count on the town's support for this. Okay to move on, Mr. Chairman? Great. The next three articles are all in the historical preservation area. One is for the Brigham Street Burial Ground, where we're doing more work to clean that up and make it an asset in town. I think most of you know where it is. It's really the oldest burial area in Northborough, but not really quite as well preserved and presented as the Howard Street Cemetery. So this will clean up a lot of trees that are falling down and endangering the area. That's the half the cost. The remainder being cleaning up the zone with fencing, designating it, just making sure we don't have trespassing on it and people just walking over it and thinking it's just a meadow. There are people buried there, and it should be treated with respect. So that is that project at a total of $137,000. Next is signs at the Kaiser Cemetery. This is consistent with projects we've approved before, signage to enhance the asset. There are no signs at that newer part of the cemetery, but it is still over 50 years old and therefore qualifies as an historic resource. So this will designate the entrances that come off of Howard Street and Whitney Street on the other side. And then the third historical preservation project is for the Historical Society building, where we've approved several prior projects to not only clean up the outside, but enhance the inside, preserve the organ, and so on. This project would bring the exterior back to its original state, restoring the shutters around all the windows. So we thought all those three projects were worthwhile, and again, affordable within our resources, which, reminder, none of this requires new appropriations and any new taxes in town. We're funding it with the 1.5% surcharge and the state matching. And thankfully, the state matching has been trending upward the last few years, including an additional bonus that came in even after the award this year. That's essentially going to show up in next year's unreserved funds, but I'm not sure how the state's doing it, but they're able to bring in more funding to the state CPA than they had, like, let's say, in the last previous 6, 8 years. So we're up to Article 28 through 30 are open space and recreation projects. And all, again, very timely. The first one is the dog park design study. I think you'd have to be sleeping if you didn't know that Northborough citizens are really looking for a dog park somewhere. It's been brought up before. It's the highest demand of the Recreation Commission to find a home for that. And this project is to fund the design study so that we are approaching the project with the appropriate background, looking at up to 5 sites, selecting the right site, getting it set up for the best possibility of approval by the town, best possibility of utilizing resources efficiently, and hopefully getting approval by the citizens. So it is not to build a dog park, but again, design study, that would be, let's call it phase 1 of building the dog park.
And the design actually includes site selection, is what you're saying?
Correct.
That's the biggest component. The most difficult thing is finding a
Recommendation of
site.
site selection.
Right, right. I
We've
was
gone
wondering
through
how
all
you're gonna
the
do
low-hanging
design
fruit.
and have a site.
And,
Right.
yeah, we've gone through all the low-hanging fruit, and we have not been able to come up with a site. I think one of the things we'll need to look at is potentially some private land, potentially for purchase,
Okay.
so.
The next project, Article 29, this is a really neat program. Over by the senior center, I think, as you know, there's a number of trails that come off of Edmund Hill Woods, flow into that area. There's some existing walking trails already. Of course, that property was the old Fish and Game, and now it's a beautiful senior center and so on. This project, again, first phase, but it would help to create a handicapped accessible trail, a better walking trail, so basically putting a surface down on the existing trail that winds through the back of the senior center, goes around the pond and so on. And this would be great. It would be the first accessible trail in Northborough. And when you think about it, just nice for anyone, not necessarily someone that, you would consider traditionally handicapped, but, walking with a walker, even just people who have a little trouble walking on normal trails, aren't looking for something strenuous. So it has a lot of support in town, senior center people supporting it as well. So it'll be an enhancement to that property there. And the next one in this area, Article 30, is a bit more exciting and a bit more complex. The Aqueduct Bridge is an iconic item in town. We all know it and see it in pictures all the time. What I didn't know was that when it was originally created, it was a beautiful walking trail across the top of it. There's a terrific picture that'll be part of the town meeting presentation from, I think, 1890-something. And it's beautiful. Of course, it's different than today. There weren't as many buildings around it. There weren't utility lines in the way and so on. But this is the first phase of making that bridge accessible again to walk over. We've already cleared accessibility to the Aqueduct Trail, to either side of it. Let's call it to the east and the west of it, to the north and the south of it. Many people are already using those trails now for walking, skiing, dog walking, whatever. This would connect the two and just adds to the connectivity and accessibility in town that we're seeking. It meets many of the goals of the open space plan and the town's master plan. But it's complex in that it needs a lot of additional engineering for how we can reinforce it for the walking surface, and also how are we going to clear space. There are utility lines at one end that are too low. They would ultimately need to be moved. There is a plan to do that, but it has to be well thought through. So this is a little expensive. Took some time understanding why we needed the complexity of the design, but it would be well worthwhile, I think, towards contributing and continuing to make that a real jewel in our town as far as a historic resource and a recreation resource.
If I may chime in here, so you've heard from Scott Charpentier in his project updates. DPW director is involved in the dog park design, the trail around the senior center. In fact, he's the one that put together the plans and sought out a grant that unfortunately we didn't receive for that, and as well as the aqueduct. So anything that's more complex, this isn't just a napkin, estimate here. We've been working through staff and making sure that the approach, the plans, and the funding is appropriate to do what we're setting out to do. Rick?
Yeah, I just want to double back on the dog park thing. Now, the plans, these are plans going into for a dog park. Are you gonna be looking at liabilities? Because, when you bring a bunch of dogs together, there could be problems. I mean, I don't know what other towns have gone through with dog parks.
Well, I think that's the key right there is, the consultants will ultimately build upon what's been successful in other towns. How have they overcome those issues?
Yeah.
In relation to the sites that are available.
So they're looking into that.
Right, and I think space is part of it, and how do you create enough safe space, parking to get to it. You can't control the dogs themselves, but, what are the rules inside? I'm not a dog owner,
Yeah, the
so I'm
risk
really
assessment.
not fluent in it, but I think a key part of the study, if I'm not mistaken, is, seeing what does work in other areas, what's been successful.
So that's what they're gonna do.
Not just, redesigning the wheel, so to speak, but trying to really dovetail off where the success has occurred.
Okay.
There's a lot of municipal dog parks that are out there, and, liability insurance is within the limits of our limited liability with regard to recreational facilities. And there's best practices, so in terms of rules and how the place is managed, but there's best practices. In fact, we're all set to go. If you remember, a couple of years ago, we were looking at the Yellow property down on Hudson Street, and we were all ready to roll on that, but unfortunately, the state pulled back on that particular property, because that's a state property, not a town property. So that was sort of the last public land that we really were contemplating, which is why we need to expand the search a little bit more.
Yeah, so I think the goals are, in site planning, looking out for, why would this site potentially get rejected again? Where are the obstacles? And then in design, there's things, if you've ever driven by some of them, you see they're very creative in the fencing. Sometimes it's how the gating is, so to sort of eliminate the possibility of, I guess, a rush of the animals and that kind of thing. And on the other hand, when done right, it creates an excellent public gathering place, just for the dogs, but for the dog owners, and just it becomes a real asset to the town, a nice place to go, so on and so forth. And, so I think it could be a real bonus. And again, the study will tie it into what are the goals of town going forward. We now have a master plan that we're working on implementing. Is this part of the downtown area? Does it make sense to be in a place where people can most easily walk to it? Or ultimately, is the site, more towards the outer boundaries of town, because that's just a more open area, If I had a hunch, it's probably where there's a place where there's more space, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's the best site, So we sort of tying it into the, our master plan, I think is important too. You're welcome.
Just a quick question. I would imagine, for example, with the aqueduct kind of thing, that as far as following that development closely, the Trails Committee is going to be
Oh, yeah.
pretty closely involved in that. Is there a town committee that would be really kind of closely involved in the dog park?
The Recreation Commission,
Recreation Commission? Okay,
they would be the sponsors and the point people, so to speak.
okay.
Whereas you're absolutely right, the accessible trail, the senior center, already well developed by Scott and the Trails Committee. And the Aqueduct Bridge project, really, for many years in the Open Space Committee, it's been a target of, how do we approach it? And first step was MWR even opening up the aqueducts for official trail walking.
Yeah.
And, the second step was getting them to acknowledge that we exist and can talk about how do we, turn over access to the aqueduct and so on and so forth. So MWR is complicated, I'm learning. So it's a slow process. Swimming good there. Just briefly continuing on, in your memo, you'll see that we had an application from the Open Space Committee, sponsored also by the Conservation Commission, for more funding into the Conservation Fund for potential purchase and potential permanent conservation of lands in town. We've successfully used that mechanism at many parts of town to keep our open spaces and expand our trails capability and things like that. But the CPC voted to pass over it this year. We already have over $700,000 in the Conservation Fund, which is not bad. Our goal is to keep that as a reasonable sum in case there's a property opportunity that comes before us. But in terms of the timeliness, with all the other projects, in particular the big ones we've already covered, we agreed it was a right year to pass over that. And that's part of how we made all the budgeting work within the budget we had and still leaving some reserves. So we passed over that this year. Article 31, however, we can't pass over because it's the White Cliffs debt service. This, I think, is the fifth debt service payment. Luckily, they're going down a little bit each year, but we need $185,000 as the next payment on that. And that's been a recurring warrant article the last 5 years. Lastly, by legislation, the CPA allows up to 5% of upcoming current revenue to go into our administrative fund, which is just for potential consultant fees and appraisals and things like that. If it's not used, it goes back into the unreserved savings.
Yes, Tony?
Thanks. The White Cliffs debt service, is $185,800 the entire amount of the payment?
For this year, yes.
Yep.
Correct. We choose to fund that out of new revenue. I think that was the intent of the voters, that we pay for it as, not that it matters per se, it all comes out of the same funding, but pay as we go each new year out of CPA funding.
So we're halfway through. This will be the 5th of 10 payments.
Done. Okay.
Any other questions on what we're hoping to get approval for this year? Big slate.
Any other comments? Seeing none, thank you for your presentation tonight.
Thank you again for all your support. We appreciate it.
Next on our agenda is the vote on our committee recommendations for the warrant articles. I'd just like to note that to conserve a little bit of time, we will be grouping warrant articles into 3 different sections. The first will be on various towns and school budget. The second will be on the capital budget articles. And the last section will be on the CPC. Now, our committee has gone over the warrant article for the last several weeks. We've had it in our hands and had a chance to look at it. And we've heard from the CPC tonight. So I'd like someone to, yes, Janice.
I move that we vote to recommend approval of the following articles: Article 4, Article 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10.
Second?
Okay, Janice Height made a motion to,
If I may, for the record, just read the article, what they are, just so people are clear. Article, because sometimes warrant articles
Right.
change. Article 4 is the town budget. Article 5 is the water, sewer, and solid waste enterprise budgets. Article 6 is the Northborough K-8 school budget. Article 7 is the Northborough, Southborough Regional High School budget. Article 8 is the Assabet Valley. Article 9 is the revolving fund authorization of the expenditure limits, which is a housekeeping matter. And Article 10 is this committee's emergency reserve fund that you control. So basically, these are all the operating budgets as Janice had alluded to.
okay, so we have a motion that our committee recommend approval of those articles. Do I have a second?
Second.
Tim, second.
Tim, we have a motion was made by Janice and seconded by Tim to approve those articles, recommend approval of those articles. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion passes unanimously. Now, our second group, do I have anyone which would like to make a motion to present on that? Yes, Tony?
Sure. I move the committee vote to recommend approval of the following fiscal year 2023 capital budget articles to town meeting as presented. Article 11, police cruiser replacements. Article 12, fire ambulance replacement. Article 13, DPW road improvements and maintenance. Article 14, for the DPW, culvert and drainage replacement. Article 15, again for DPW, 1-ton dump truck with plow replacement. Article 16, DPW, 20-ton dump truck with spreader and plow replacement. Article 17, DPW, loader replacement. Article 18, DPW, backhoe replacement. Article 19, MPIC,
It's a Master Plan Implementation Committee.
thank you, downtown master plan study. Article 20, sewer, inflow and infiltration, II mitigation. Article 21, purchase of 4 West Main Street, Old Town Hall.
Okay, do I have a second? Janice, second?
For discussion, if you move to discussion, I would like to just kind of comment on one of the articles, if that's appropriate.
Here we have a motion to recommend approval of Articles 11 through 21, and we have a second. Do I have any discussion?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that this was discussed at the Selectmen's meeting. Article 21, purchase of 4 West Main Street. This is the Old Town Hall. So under the agreement, the 40-year agreement, that building can return to the town for a nominal amount. It's $10,000. So town council recommended, although we're not in that window where we can actually reacquire the building right now, that window starts in May of this year and goes to May of next year. So town council's recommendation is that we have an article on the warrant, which was approved by the Board of Selectmen to allow and authorize the board to reacquire the building. So this doesn't say what we're going to do with it. It doesn't say if we're going to sell it or reuse it or anything. All this does is authorize us to reacquire the structure. And there's no downside to reacquiring it. It's meant to come back to the town after 40 years, and it will. And it's worth, somewhere between $1 and $2 million, depending on, what assessed value you look at. So the bottom line is that there's no downside. The town will take it back. We are getting ready to move forward with the feasibility study to look at either renovating this building, moving town hall to 4 West Main Street, or building new. That feasibility study was delayed due to the pandemic. So that's ready to get going. So that will actually coincide nicely. That study then will determine, as we come back around for town meeting next year, we'll look for authorization to either sell the building and put it towards a renovation here or a new building, or an appropriation to renovate that building, move town hall over there. Those are all the discussions that'll take place. This just simply authorizes us to reacquire the facility. There is no reason why you wouldn't take back the asset. That's all this is. So as far as what you do with it once you take it back, that's the subject of a feasibility study and another town meeting vote. So I just want to make sure that everybody's clear on that.
Do we have any other comments or questions on Article 21 or any other articles that we just discussed? Bob?
Yeah, so there's no dollar amount to this. This is just,
There is. So under the 40-year agreement, the town can take the building back for $10,000, or, but part of the agreement is, or we can deduct any deferred maintenance, and I've sent them letters in the last 2 years about the deferred maintenance. So, again, this is all stuff that will be worked out.
okay.
But the article does authorize, because you have to have the authorization to execute it, to raise and appropriate $10,000 if needed.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, do I have, let's see, Tony Petit made a motion to I recommend approval of Articles 11 through 21, and Janice Height seconded that. Do I have all in favor? All opposed? The articles,
I just also want to mention that prior to the meeting, you were forwarded the Financial Planning Committee's final report that does all the capital stuff. They have unanimously recommend approval of all these articles as well.
so we have the motion was made, seconded, and approved unanimously to recommend approval of Articles 11 through 21. And finally, our last group is the CPC, which we have heard from tonight. Would someone like to make a motion on these articles?
I move the committee vote to recommend approval of the following fiscal year 2023 Community Preservation Act articles to town meeting as presented. Article 23, construction of 8 affordable senior one-bedroom rental units. Article 24, affordable housing reserve. Article 25, Brigham Street burial ground beautification. Article 26, signs to identify the Kaiser section of the Northborough Cemetery. Article 27, shutter restoration of the historical building. Article 28, design and project management of dog park. Article 29, ADA compliant accessible trail at the senior center. Article 30, preliminary design of pedestrian access over Assabet River Aqueduct Bridge. Article 31, White Cliffs debt service. And Article 32, authorization of Community Preservation Fund administration expenses.
Second?
Okay, we had George Brinkle made a motion to recommend approval of Articles 23 through, just lost it, 23 through 32, and was it Tony?
No.
Tim Kalen. Tim Kalen seconded.
And Tim seconded that. All in favor of recommending approval of these articles? Any opposed? Seeing no opposition, Articles 23 through 32 have unanimously been approved, unanimously been voted to approve recommendation at town meeting.
Excellent. So if I may, I just want to point out, so Article 23 is the affordable senior housing you talked extensively about tonight. Article 24 is a layup. So essentially, under the community preservation, the chair traditionally works with the financial team to complete your report recommendations. Really, it's just compiling the votes that you took here tonight into a format for town meeting. So your job, literally your job, is to make recommendations on these articles. So we want to do that in a written format. So I would envision one more brief meeting, so to approve the draft report, which would be worked on, next week, send it out to everybody. Everybody gets a chance to review it, and then a brief meeting to approve it. So the question then becomes, if we have a brief meeting, do we want to do it on Wednesday night, April 13th, or do we want to potentially do it? We have a meeting scheduled already, a joint meeting on April 14th at 6 p.m. We could meet at 5 p.m., same night, same location, and review the report, or you can do it on a separate night on the Wednesday before. But you will have the need for one more brief meeting to publicly go through and approve your report.
April 14th is Thursday?
April 14th is a Thursday. That's a joint ARPA meeting. It's at 6.
I would have trouble getting there by 5.
Okay. That meeting, so So the April 14th joint ARPA meeting is at 6 PM in the library at the Algonquin Regional High School. It'll be a hybrid meeting, so people can physically be there to provide public input, or they can call in like they do at a selectmen's meeting. But you're gonna need one more meeting, so we just need to figure out where that gets squeezed in.
That's on a Thursday night, just like our regular meetings are anyway, so we shouldn't have trouble except for the earlier time frame.
Or we can just schedule a brief meeting on that Wednesday, because the Financial Planning Committee is done with theirs, but that would have you Wednesday and Thursday. I mean, typically, that meeting is about a 15 or 20-minute, because you're looking at the report, and then if anybody has anything they want to add or comment on, under the open meeting law, you have to do it at an open meeting. You can't do it just by email, unfortunately, so.
Does anyone prefer Wednesday over Thursday? Tim?
Do we have to meet in person for that?
Yes, you have to, either by Zoom or in person.
Oh, that's why, like, we could do it over Zoom.
You could do it over Zoom, yes.
Okay.
I don't know if that's easier for people.
Yeah, it's just another option if needed, that's all.
I mean, generally, that meeting literally takes about 15 or 20 minutes, unless there's anything else.
Through Zoom. If you wanted to do it on Thursday at 5 o'clock.
Okay.
On Zoom.
Okay.
I might not be able to make the Thursday meeting, but Wednesday is definitely okay.
I cannot make the Wednesday meeting.
Wednesday?
I cannot make Wednesday.
Cannot make Wednesday. And Tony, you could or couldn't make Wednesday?
Could not make Thursday.
Thursday is difficult, but.
Okay.
At 5.
So we are meeting for the ARPA on Thursday already. I know that's a difficult night for you, Tony. One of the things that you can do is when the draft is distributed, if you have any comments, you can send them just to the chairman, not to the whole group, and then he can work those comments in and discuss them at the open session on Thursday, if that's what makes sense. Does that work? Because you're not going to be able to make the Thursday meeting either way, right, Tony?
Right.
Okay. But everybody else can make Thursday. But you can't make it, George, unless it's by Zoom?
I will see what I can do. I usually am in Acton until a little bit after 5, which would make it very hard to be here.
Yeah.
I'll see if I can.
It's just, it's tough because we got to haul out the cable access folks and because it has to get streamed, has to be either in person or live.
Let me see if I can leave at 4.
If it's easier to have a meeting on Wednesday than just have it without me. That's okay.
Yeah, but if it's only a 15-minute,
Right. I mean, it's just, you just need to bless the report, and as I said, it's really a record of your votes. There's some, traditionally, the chair drafts up some, introductory transmittal information, and then it's a record of your vote and your recommendations, but the committee does need to
If we
public.
had it on Zoom on Thursday, then you have you're at home with your computer or phone, whatever, and then you have to end that and still get over to the school in time for the
Right.
live meeting.
Right.
So I don't think the Zoom would be that logical to do.
I was just thinking of the Zoom on Wednesday.
Instead of people having to physically come here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Either one, I can work either one. We just need one more brief meeting with you guys. And that's assuming, and I shouldn't make this assumption, you've met with all the departments and everything. Is there any other information or any other departments that you feel like you need to meet with or you want to meet with? I mean, you've pretty much met with everybody at this point. So assuming there's no new information that you need, it would be appropriate to just wrap up the report.
ignorance is bliss, but what's ARPA?
American Rescue Plan Act,
Okay.
right. I know, we talk in acronyms. Right. That's the federal aid that the town
I
received.
know what it is,
Yep.
then.
So is it Wednesday?
I'd like to see it personally, all done on the one night, but
Me too,
On Thursday?
yeah.
I can make either, so it's, if everybody wants to do it on Thursday.
I'd like to make a motion for Thursday.
If I just may, so if you can't make the meeting, and if you have any comments or suggestions, again, not to the group, you can't do this in a serial fashion, but if you sent them just to the chair, then he can incorporate those in, and then we just need we need a quorum on Thursday to approve the report, so.
I will do what I can to be here at 5 on Thursday, so I won't force a Zoom meeting. I'm beginning to realize
Yeah.
if I'm away on Zoom at 5 o'clock, I'm not gonna be here at 6 o'clock either, so.
The 6 o'clock's probably the more important
6
of the
o'clock's
two
the more
meetings.
important one, so let me see if I can be here at 5.
Okay. And it would be 5 o'clock at because we're gonna
At
be
the
there anyway,
library.
at the Algonquin Regional High School library. We'll set up there, have our quick meeting. Access will already be set up there anyway. And then we'll move to the other meeting.
If this is a quick meeting, why do we need an hour? Why can't it be 5:45?
Because I gotta get ready for the next meeting, because I'm presenting and all of that stuff, so I just need a little bit of
Get ready,
time.
you just kind of wind up and go.
She knows you well.
I don't know how long you guys are gonna talk, but, if you talk for 15 or 20 minutes, and then I need to shift gears and get ready for the next presentation, it's really for my benefit, I guess. If you wanna do 5:30, that might help you out, George, does that make sense? Okay, so why don't we say 5:30
Yeah.
on Thursday, April 14th, at the Algonquin Regional High School Library. Make sure you're on time.
I can walk.
Actually, I can leave, Jason can handle that meeting then, or somebody, one of the other staff can cover you guys if it gets tight.
Okay.
Just want to make sure Access has time. Danny, you have time to pivot? All right, perfect. Excellent. Yeah, that's good.
We'll be meeting at 5:30 at the Assabet Library. I'm sorry, Algonquin Library, 5:30.
Yeah.
Item 7 on our agenda. Any other business to come before the?
Just one more announcement I want you all to be aware of. So the Board of Selectmen, in conjunction with the moderator, voted to hold town meeting at the Regional High School Auditorium on the regular scheduled day of April 25th. Just reminding you that town meeting starts at 6 PM, not 7, 6 PM. We changed that at last year. And it'll run consecutive nights if necessary. So town meeting starts at 6. You have a scheduled meeting for 5 PM, like you do every year. We schedule that meeting, so Appropriations, Financial Planning, and Board of Selectmen always have a meeting beforehand. In case something happens at the last minute, the meeting's already scheduled, so you can legally meet, modify your recommendations, or take up whatever the issue is if necessary. If not, then you either don't have to meet that night, or you can just meet and say hi and approve your minutes and call it a night. Okay, so 5 PM on April 25th at the high school. We'll send you more detail. I just want to make sure you guys have that noted. The big thing is people, I can't say how many people I've talked to that, we've been doing a couple of Saturday town meetings, but they forget that we changed the time of town meeting. Actually, Tim Kalin was the impetus for that one, to 6 PM. So it's going 6 to 10 is town meeting.
All right. And you just said 5 PM?
You're gonna meet, you will meet at 5 PM.
Right.
Town meeting begins at 6 PM. Okay. And again, if there's nothing that you need to do, you may just meet and approve any outstanding minutes.
Okay.
And that's it. So what we've learned is sometimes things develop at the last minute.
It did one time,
Yep,
remember?
yep. And so if you legally post it, then you can meet, discuss it, take a vote, or modify a vote, and move forward. Excellent. Thank you very much.
entertain a motion to adjourn?
Yes, I move that we adjourn.
Do I have a
You
second?
got a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, Janice made a motion to adjourn, Bob seconded, all in favor? You're not in favor, Janice? All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. The meeting is adjourned at, let's see, 6 minutes to 9 o'clock.
Thank God.